I'm Dan Mercedes, and this is Orion Doctrine. Today we're talking about why AI agents must be physically isolated from the infrastructure they're supposed to govern. Here's the thesis. Autonomous systems fail when intelligence is granted implicit execution authority. Most AI architectures wrap policy around execution rather than embedding constraint into the substrate itself. They assume enforcement can occur after intent generation. This creates an illusion of governance, not actual control. If a model can resolve DNS, open a socket, or access credentials directly, enforcement becomes advisory. It's a suggestion, not a boundary. True governance requires structural isolation. The constraint must exist beneath the intelligence, not layered on top of it. AI models and agents must be treated as untrusted compute nodes. Execution capability must be structurally separated from intent generation. The execution substrate must physically and cryptographically lack the routing primitives, identity credentials, and memory pathways required to interact with external infrastructure. If intelligence can route itself, governance is already compromised. Let me slow that down and show you how this actually works. Isolation is not a policy decision. It is a structural constraint. Agents execute within ephemeral, lane-isolated memory enclaves. Each enclave is destroyed and reconstituted per session or within a bounded lifecycle window. There is no long-lived memory. There is no persistent privilege. Each enclave operates within distinct namespaces or micro-VM boundaries, enforcing hardware-isolated lanes. Process space, network stacks, file system access, and credential exposure are segregated at the substrate level. Hardware-level isolation prevents lateral escape. The execution nodes do not possess direct TCP stack access, raw socket capabilities, persistent routing tables, or external credential storage. The absence of these primitives is structural, not policy-based. Agents cannot resolve external domains. Without DNS resolution, there is no outbound path. Without an outbound path, there is no implicit execution. Capability is removed, not restricted. Here's where it gets interesting. Because agents cannot communicate directly with external infrastructure, the concept of tools must be redefined. All agent tools become internal RPC stubs. Agents do not execute actions. They submit structured intent payloads to RPC stubs. RPC stubs forward those payloads directly to the control plane for deterministic evaluation. The agent has no direct execution rights. The control plane evaluates, signs, and constructs ephemeral routing exclusively for explicitly approved transactions. Routes do not exist implicitly. They are created dynamically and destroyed immediately after completion. There is no standing execution path. Enforcement at the substrate layer is mechanical. Every intended action must traverse the control plane. There is no alternate path. Routes are constructed dynamically for approved transactions and destroyed upon completion. No standing network paths exist. Unauthorized egress attempts result in immediate packet drops at the container or hypervisor boundary. No external transmission occurs. If execution is halted, the agent's memory state is frozen. It cannot autonomously retry or escalate the blocked request. Isolation is enforced physically, not logically. Think about what that actually means. Deterministic governance requires observable enforcement at the boundary. Where does enforcement occur? At the network namespace and hypervisor boundary of the execution enclave. What happens on failure? Unauthorized egress attempts result in immediate packet drops and execution suspension. What artifact proves enforcement? Substrate-level egress, rejection records, bound to policy version and session context, attest that no unauthorized route was established. Enforcement at the substrate layer is observable precisely because no transmission ever occurs. Now here's the objection. You're probably thinking, doesn't this make agents too constrained to be useful? If every action requires control plane approval, doesn't that create bottlenecks and kill autonomy? The answer is no, because the control plane evaluates intent deterministically. Approved patterns execute without human intervention. The difference is that approval happens before capability is granted, not after. The agent remains autonomous within approved boundaries. What changes is that those boundaries are physically enforced, not merely suggested. So let's compress this. If intelligence can execute without passing through a control plane, governance is illusory. True governance demands deterministic enforcement at the execution boundary so that an agent physically cannot execute a disallowed command. If governance is not deterministically enforced before state mutation, it is not governance. It is hope. Treat your agents as untrusted compute. Remove capability. Don't restrict it. Build the constraint into the substrate. Everything else is theater.